Okay, so defending oneself. So why is this relevant? This is relevant because we're going to talk about murder. And so when is it not considered murder? And when is it not considered um, grievous bodily harm? When you defend yourself. Okay, so defending oneself is a scenario where that does not apply. However, there are steps included, and unfortunately, it's very, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, it is very what's the word? Left wing as opposed to very right wing, right? It is a minimalist stance, as we'll see. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, as noted in Tirmidhi, whoever dies defending his property is a martyr. Whoever dies defending his family is a martyr. Whoever dies defending his religion is a martyr. And whoever dies defending himself is a martyr. So you have your property, you have your family, you have your religion, and you have your own life. So this is something that is noble and great. Okay. And so the principle is you have to do the least possible to get the job done. Okay. If you do not do the least possible, then you are again liable for grievous bodily harm or whatever you want to call it, and or murder. So somebody looked at you, so you shot them in the head. So why did you do that? I felt scared. I felt threatened. Right? So that doesn't, it doesn't work like that. So you have to do the least possible thing. If you can run away, then that's what you have to do. Right? So were you able to run away from them? Yes. Why didn't you do it? Want to stand my ground. Okay, that's not what we're talking about. So you could not run away. Fine. So now then what did you do? You shouted at them and said, "I'm going to do this." Okay, was that something that's possible? No. Okay, striking to part of the body. Okay, striking to the head. Striking the head with an instrument, right? You have to take the least possible means step by step. Right? So you're not liable for life or property in that situation. You killed somebody, you injured somebody, you damaged their property. Why did you do it? While I was defending myself. So therefore, you're not liable to pay for damage to their property or pay blood money or qisas, an eye for an eye, for tooth for harming someone's body or taking someone's life. By default, one must defend others, another person's property, some other person's life, and men and women, if male and female, from rape. These are somebody who this is not their life and property, right? So this is we're talking about the maqasid al-sharia, right? We talk about defending religion. You can't really defend someone's religion necessarily. I guess you can to some extent. But defending the preservation of property, preservation of life. And when we say the fifth thing is what we said, what? We say deen, we say mind, we say life, we say property, and then we say ird, right? Which is, this is a word in Arabic, which is kind of difficult to translate. It means you want sexual decency or one's sexual honor, or you call it lineage. But it's not really the same thing. So protecting a man from being raped is not lineage, is it? There's no issue of lineage there. So it's not really, it is lineage, but it's more than that. So the fact that you have a right to not be sexually assaulted, that's not the same as physically assaulted, right? The fact that, for example, you have a right not to be labeled as morally loose and indecent. Okay. Okay. This is so we mentioned this last week. We said even if they're a kafir harbi, even if they're a non-Muslim actively engaged in military campaign against Muslims, their property is not sacred, their life is not sacred, but their body, this thing still has to happen. Rape cannot happen, period. Right? And so this is where this whole concept of there's a qaida fiqhiyya they mention, right? That one's sexuality or one's private parts do not become halal through permission, right? So that whole idea of consent or mutual consent or my body, my right, and these kind of ideas, we do not identify with them, right? We don't identify with them. So obviously here there's no consent, but the whole idea is that it just cannot happen, right? So we're not even thinking about the right of the person, we're talking about the right of the action. Like that thing just cannot happen, period. Right? So even if the life is not sacred, meaning the example of someone whose life is not sacred is, we said a non-Muslim actively engaged fighting Muslims. We mentioned what else? Somebody who has been condemned to death. So he's on death row. He is going to be executed tomorrow morning. The sentence has already been given, and then he escapes, and then he's in this situation. So his life is not sacred. Okay, so I'm traveling we talk about this in Tayammum, right? I'm traveling in the desert with somebody who was sentenced to death. Do I make Tayammum and give him my water, or do I make wudu? The answer is you make wudu. Why? Because his life is not sacred. You do not have to keep him alive. So even in that scenario, his life is not sacred, right? It's still haram for these kind of things to happen, right? So they must be defended. And you have to protect your own property, and you have to protect your own life from the attack or misappropriation of a non-Muslim. So when it comes to a non-Muslim, you are not allowed to let a non-Muslim kill you or let a non-Muslim steal your property. You can give him property. Say, bro, how much money do you want? Take it. Take it. It's not a problem. I don't mind. But you cannot let him steal it, okay, from a non-Muslim. And you may defend, it is permissible, one's own property and one's own life from a Muslim whose life is sacred. So if his life is sacred, meaning he has not been condemned to death, then you are allowed to protect yourself against him stealing your property. And you are allowed to do this, but you're not obliged to. So if it is an issue of that, if it's an issue of getting violent, you don't mind, then you're allowed to allow a Muslim, right, whose life is not sacred, to take your uh, um, a Muslim a Muslim may take your property or take your life, in fact, right? Um, with a few exceptions, you're the only scholar on the face of the earth. You're the ruler, so you're the king. What will happen if you let a Muslim kill you? You are the only person who has a certain knowledge, or the only person available. If you were to die today, there would be major harm to the ummah. So in which case you cannot do that. If there's no way to escape, oh, I let him kill me. Why? Can you run away? No. So if you cannot run away and it's an issue of either me or him, then you may defend yourself against him, but you're not obliged to. And also on the proviso that others wouldn't be killed too. So you know he's just out to kill you, as opposed to he's going to kill you and your family, right? He's going to kill you and your family. In that situation, you cannot submit, and you have to defend yourself, because you're not really defending yourself, you're defending them. So it's slightly different. Okay? Making sense to everybody?
Yes.
Right? And so
Yes.
there are countless things that we see in the seerah and in fiqh that are fundamentally different to the way we value things, right? If we look at, for example, patriarchy, we in the West are not a patriarchic society by default, right? It's not it's there some kind of there here and there, but it's not a major thing. The concept of you and your brothers as a tribe, a man having, there was some society, I don't know what it was, some society in somewhere in South America, and some jungle place where it's like that is still the state. Like a person's success in life is judged on how many children he has, right? That's it, and particularly boys he has, and the wealth is really not an issue at all. And there's continual warring between the tribes based on number of men you have and your lineage to your tribe and those kind of things, right? Um, that's not really the world that we live in so much, right? And here's another thing, right? What's the difference between Muslim and non-Muslim? Right? Again, I talked to an Ottoman Turk 150 years ago, so of course, right? Like the dignity and the self-respect of the Muslim vis-a-vis the non-Muslim. Okay? That I will give into a Muslim, but I will not give into a non-Muslim. I will accept the help from a Muslim. I will not accept the help from a non-Muslim. So we spoke about this before, right? We spoke about this before in the context of living in America or living in the West in general. Most people who live in the West are sticking out their hands for help because you cannot afford your own health care. And it is basically a charity from non-Muslims. You cannot afford your own schooling. You're not paying for schooling. You're not paying for many things. Right? So the default is you are sticking out your hands asking for help. A refugee, for example. 150 years ago, Ottoman Turkey, a Muslim is not going to go as a refugee to a non-Muslim country. They're not going to do that. They're just going to die. And that's it. Right? When there was the fitna between Sayyidina Ali and Sayyidina Muawiyah, the Byzantines offered support to one of the two. I think it was Sayyidina Muawiyah. It would make more sense. And Sayyidina Muawiyah says, basically, get lost. This is a dispute between two brothers. You're not invited. So he could have won, right? He could have made it very easy if you just get the Byzantines involved. But they had that self-respect that this is an issue between two Muslims about what's right and what is wrong in the deen. There's nothing to do with non-Muslims. What are you talking about? Why would I ask for a non-Muslim for help? Right? And so then thereafter we see Spain, where Muslims are reaching out to help for non-Muslims and destroying each other there through that. The different what's it called? The Crusaded cities, same time in that whole period, you see sellouts, right? And then bit by bit by bit, there comes a norm that if you want to be a strong Muslim ruler, you team up with another strong non-Muslim ruler that helps you out, helps you kill your opponents off, etc., etc. So it's very, very, there's no self-respect anymore, right? And so so on the respect of the deen. Okay. So it's an important value to see, right? And again, it's lost on many of us because it's not part of my daily life as a Muslim at all. It's not, we don't really see things like that. Okay. Is everyone following the concept?
Yes.
Yes.
So this is why, what was it, Sheikh Yahya Rodas, he said the average religious modern Muslim requires about 10 to 15 years of rewiring to become like a normal Muslim of the past. Because just everything's off in our heads. The way that we think, the way that we process things is just off. Right? And I'm sure each generation or each place in Muslim history, there's things that are off, right? Sahaba had to deal with jahili things in their head, right? And they had to deal with all sorts of things. But it's important to understand what is off, right? We're kind of stuck somewhere between, we don't really understand gender, we don't really understand politics, we don't really understand dunya and akhirah, don't understand. There's many things that are just kind of like fundamentally off. May Allah protect us all. Okay, so it is so with these people though, with a Muslim, if it's going to be an issue of life, right, then it is sunnah to give in. Right, you are not some important ruler or some important scholar. There is no way to escape. Others wouldn't be killed. It's an issue of you versus him. It is sunnah to give in that to the scenario. So if an issue of that, either you're going to die or he's going to die, right? Or the only way, basically the only way to save your property would be to kill him. It's better for him to just give up. Give him the money. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala quotes in the Quran, right? The story of Habil and Habil, right? Cain and Abel. When Abel says to Cain, I swear, if you stretch out your hand to kill me, I will never stretch out my hand to kill you. Indeed, I fear Allah, the Lord of the worlds. I will not do it. If you're gonna kill me, I'm not gonna kill you. And in Imam Ahmad and Tirmidhi both narrate that the Prophet ﷺ said, "Be like the son of Adam," i.e., the better of the two. Right? What did he do? He said, "If you're gonna kill me, I'm not gonna kill you." The sunnah there is to not to let that person kill you or take your property and not get to the stage where you have to kill them. It's better to be the person who does not have blood on their hands on Judgment Day. Right? And so many Muslims might have this in mentality. I'll die protecting my money. I'll die protecting my property. But in their minds, they don't have this thing, where it's Iman versus Kufr. They don't have that. And so they have it. So where in their mind, it's more like self-respect and property, like out of dignity, they're going to do this, and they're kind of a healthy pride. Whereas the Muslim version of it, the Islamic version of it, is healthy pride about religion, right? Pride about religion, right? Is that when on the Hajj that we do, um, on the Hajj when we go around the Kaaba, we trot, right? At a certain point. Where does that all come from? That all comes from the idea of showing the non-Muslims that we're strong and they're not sick and weak, right? So that's a value that we don't really have, we don't really identify with, right? Many Muslims have that dignity of like, okay, I'm not going to stretch out my hand, but it's not an issue of Iman or Kufr. It's just I wouldn't stretch out my hand, period, or I wouldn't give in, period, right? So if you look at like Palestine, for example, many Palestinians or many people that the way they identify with the land is religious, right? There was one Algerian brother, and he said, what is the capital of Algeria? And I was like, Algiers? And he said, no, the capital of Algeria is Jerusalem, right? Like that's how we are in Algeria. We identify with the Palestinian issue, right? But many people, they don't see it like that. Many people see it like that's a Palestinian problem. Poor you. I feel sorry for you. You are Palestinians. That's another place. That's not part of Jordan. That's not part of Syria. That's not part of Lebanon. That's a different place. That's you Arabs, or you're a subset of Arabs. And I don't identify with you, though I sympathize. And it's a political thing, right? And or it's a land issue, or it's an honor. It's a thing that this is my land, right? They say that with the Afghans, when Alexander the Great was trying to conquer Afghanistan or conquering Afghanistan, it was a pain in the neck, right? And so he sent some of his generals to go and find out like what on earth's going on. Why is it so difficult? The campaign in Afghanistan, why is it so difficult? Obviously, back in those days, it wasn't called Afghanistan. But why is it so difficult? So he spent some time with them and he realized that they always went around with this funny thing, like a little bag. And when they went to sleep, they took this thing out of this bag and put it under their head. So the general asked the Afghans, like, what is it that you're doing? He says, we are a people that can only sleep on our own soil. So wherever we go, we always carry some of the soil from our land with it. Right. So then the general returns to Alexander the Great. That's just a story, of course, and tells them there's no way we're gonna, this is not gonna be an easy battle. These people really love their land. So is it like this is my key to my house? I want my house back. I planted these olive trees. This is where I'm from. Or is it this is where the Prophet ﷺ prayed, and this is where the Prophet ﷺ said that that we should be defending this place to the end. So is it a religious thing or is it a property and national thing, right? And so for many people, it's mixed, right? And may Allah purify the hearts of everybody, because you don't want to die for national reasons, right? Dulce et decorum est, right? Are we familiar with this poem? Is that
I'm not. No.
World War One poem? Anyway, so the charge of the what's it called? The charge of the what's it called?
The
Brigade or
charge of
something?
the Light Brigade?
Yeah, so the charge of the Light Brigade, right? that was a it was basically it was a big mess during the War of the Boers, I think, right in South Africa, and they just made a big error where they had these people charge this the light brigade charge into open like cannon fire, and she got cut to pieces. So it was a bit of a stupid thing to do. So then they turned it into a heroic thing. Oh, look, cannons to the right of them, cannons to the left of them. Da 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 da. It's just stupid, basically. You made a mistake. You just killed all these soldiers for no reason. Um, so then that was a poem, right? That people going into a World War One and World War Two, I believe this is World War One actually, a World War One poem. They were in England. You growing up with this, right? It's like, oh, the heroic thing and the heroic thing and good, you just, was it stiff upper lip and go and do it. And then in reality, all you see in the front, during in the trenches is just 17-year-olds dying for no reason, just stupid, right? And so it doesn't make any sense, right? So anyway, Wilfred Owen, I believe his name is Wilfred Owen. He the poet. He's basically said like, don't give me that nonsense, right? I'd use other words if it was halal, but don't give me all that nonsense. What are you talking about, right? Don't come on and say dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. Don't come and say it's noble and sweet to die for your country. Nobody's dying for the country. There's just teenagers dying for no reason, right? This is just, and this is even before Vietnam, right? Don't give me that nonsense, right? And so it's not sweet and noble. This is just stupid. This is just carnage for no reason, for somebody's financial gain. And so it's, dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. It's sweet and noble to die for your country. That's wrong, right? Don't die for land. Don't die for Palestine. Die for Allah, right? And so it's a religious thing, right? And so there's a twist there, right? Is that be the like the son of Adam. Oh, dignity. I'm not going to let anybody tell me what to do. That's called arrogance, as opposed to I'm going to not let a non-Muslim tell me what to do because Islam is greater, right? I'm not going to let anybody take my property, right? I was raised in the South. That's what we do, right? We'll die defending my farm. That's called arrogance, right? And somewhat praiseworthy, but it's not Islamic, as opposed to Allah has given me this thing and I will die protecting it. Allah has given me this right. But if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent a Muslim to do this, then I would prefer that I die than he does. It's very different. So the whole mentality is different, right? Is everyone following my tangents?
Uh, yes, can I ask a
Yes.
question though, Sheikh?
One before, can I just everyone as I was
Sure,
following?
of course. Yeah.
Adib, you make sense? Lanat, safe.
Yes.
Not everyone in
Alhamdulillah.
this room has a PhD, Sham, okay? Just joking.
Yes.
Ahmed, making sense?
Yes, Alhamdulillah.
Okay, great. Inshallah, we're gonna be quoting Swahili next. I'm just joking. Go ahead, Sham.
Assalamu alaikum. I guess my question is that, as you said, everything has to be fi Allah. So my question then is, and since we know from the Sunnah that it's all about niyyah, what if somebody says that they are going to fight the Zionists fi Allah, and they make their intention defending, whether it's taking part in a protest or dying in in that area.
Yeah.
So my question is that if you make the intention, like, I don't know, if you hear that someone is going to attack a masjid and you go to protect the house of Allah fi Allah, right? Doesn't that change the act?
Yeah, that's true. But I'm just saying is that the motive. Yeah, so that's correct. Yes, but the mindset that creates that intention has to be there, right? And so that's what I'm trying to say. And so when you have this person who has a lot of like, like I'm not gonna let anybody kill me. I'll not let anybody take my property. And then it doesn't change when the hadith changes, right? And they realize, oh, this is a Muslim. So actually, if it's me or him, so then the fact that it doesn't change, it means that the niyyah is off. But otherwise, yeah, it's
Yeah,
right.
and then one more follow-up, Sheikh,
So I
is
mean, I just
the
give a
same.
good example, right? I studied, I was in Jordan, right? Studied literature, etc. So a lot of literature to do with the whole thing is written by like communists or like socialists. Like who is it? Like Mahmoud Darwish, he's a very, very famous poet, right? And he does this like amazing kind of like poetry where he kind of intertwines Muslim Spain with Palestine. But as far as I know, he's not a Muslim, or at least he's not He's not using Islamic rhetoric. He's using political, historical, rhetoric, right? It's about land. It's about the Palestinian issue, right? It's just Palestine and that kind of stuff. And so it's just like it's a lot of it is very murky, right? It's very murky, and you meet people who are like, yeah, really hardcore. So like, if you're hardcore anti-Zionist, I hope to see jihad in your own life, meaning you're doing jihad and nafs, because otherwise it's just fake, right? Or at least you're trying, right? At least, hey, I know I have problems, but it's one thing, but I have these problems. But it's like hijab, not a priority. Stopping smoking, not a priority. Prayer, when possible. Palestine, number one priority. Something's off. Like you're probably not looking at things in the right way at all. May Allah protect us. Okay, go ahead, Sham.
Yeah, I guess my follow-up to that was also you had said earlier about, when Muslims fight against other when people fight Muslims, whatever. My question is, like in the U.S. military and all the branches, there are Muslim chaplains, and there's a chaplaincy school that trains Muslims to serve in the military, to like do things. What if somebody made the intention to give da'wah in the military? Would that still be acceptable or not?
Yeah, that's fine. Because what are you doing? Like I was in the US military talking to the and so you the thing is you're dancing on a very, very fine line because that's a good thing. You are not like it's like firefighter. Like, oh, you're a firefighter for a kafir government. Okay, well, what do I do? I just save innocent people from dying, right? So I'm not involved in any kind of like thing that help the harms Muslims, right? So is it how to what extent does a chaplain help non-Muslims fight Muslims? Like I don't know. I can't conceive of it. The problem is, the problem is the kid comes in with your question, says, Sheikh, I've got a question for you. He said, yeah, I'm feeling really guilty about being part of this army. And I just feel like, is it halal for me to be part of this army? What are you going to say? Right?
That you're asking.
So now it's like that's you're pushing it like you're not employed to get people to leave the army, right? And so if you don't speak the truth, right, it's a problem. Just like you're a judge. I'm a judge in a US court. Are you going to rule contrary to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given a rule judged? So when it comes to it, it's like that's haram. What you just confirmed was haram. You gave someone's rights to the wrong person. That is haram. How is that okay? It's not okay. Right? Or a lawyer, the same kind of thing. Like you just help somebody get something from somebody else that's not theirs in the Sharia. Right. And so I'm not saying so it's a great thing to do. It's a fantastic thing to do. I don't see any harm in it personally. And you can help non-Muslims and you help Muslims. The issue is, can you it's like you're basically a spy. I mean, if they knew who you were and they knew what you're gonna say, they wouldn't hire you, you know. And I say the same thing about Jummah. If you know what Jummah is, they wouldn't allow Jummah because Jummah is not a religious activity. Jummah is a religio-political activity, right? They would ban it in China and they would ban it in other countries as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah. Especially, I remember when you said that, especially if people followed through and leaned on certain things instead of just a staff at Juma.
Exactly, right? There's other things. So
Which
there's
I'm not even
what
going to
I'm trying to
say
say
because I
is
remember you
what
didn't
we've
even.
done is, and forgive me using the language, we've castrated Islam to make it palatable. And then that has made it basically it's like a domesticated version of something. And so that means that Muslims can just like, oh, I'm happy, what's it called? Pollyanna, I'm happy, Pollyanna Muslim. Like, hi, I love everybody. Hi, hi. It's not actually like that. And then what happens is we come along, we study the Sharia, or we read the Seerah, and there's just like things that don't really click. There's things that are off in the way that we are and the way that it actually is. Right? So here's like, okay, but if it's all about happy, I love everybody, why is it that I don't let a kafir, like I won't let a kafir steal my money. I won't let a kafir kill me. Like, and I can't do that. Like, what's that difference? If we're all like happy, but we're all happy bunnies, right? It's not actually like that. And so what I'm trying to say is there's many things that are just like totally lost and perverted in the way that we live life, right? The way that we live life. I'm not promoting terrorism. I'm not promoting murder. I'm not promoting being horrible to our non-Muslim neighbors or anything like that. I'm not trying to say that. What I'm saying is just it's more complex than that. But it's not as simple as this Pollyanna, happy-go-lucky, teddy bear in the sky, come and hug me, Muslim. That doesn't really make sense. It doesn't really add up. Okay. So the next discussion is rebellion. Okay. So this is another very subtle issue. How on earth? So here I'm fighting Muslims. Here another issue of fighting Muslims. You cannot fight Muslims. You cannot kill Muslims. So what is this? Okay. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in Surah Al-Hujurat, right? And if two factions among the believers should fight, then make settlement between the two. But if one of them rebels against the other, goes over the limits, then fight against the one that rebels until it returns to the ordinance of Allah. And if it returns, then make settlement between them in justice and act justly. Indeed, Allah loves those who act justly. Okay, so there's this verse of the Quran. What did it mean to the Muslims when it was revealed? Something less than what it means to us now. Because post the revelation, we saw civil war, right? We saw the civil war between firstly between Sayyidina Ali and the Medinans, so a faction of the Muslims raising up against Sayyidina Ali when he first became the Khalifa and first moved his Khilafat to Kufa from Aisha and others in what's called in the from Medina. So right, that was a civil war. Okay, and having the battle of what we call the battle of the camel. Okay, and then thereafter they have then we have Siffin, which is then another civil war between two powers, Sayyidina Ali's army and coming from Iraq, and Sayyidina Muawiyah's army coming from Syria, right? Civil war. Thereafter, we see other civil wars. We see the Zubayrids, right? Abdullah ibn Zubayr claiming Khilafah in Mecca, and the Mecca being besieged by the Umayyads, and thereafter other things, right? So the Abbasids basically, the Abbasids coming in from the east. This is rebellion, essentially, from an outward point of view. It's rebellion, meaning, in the process, and there's many hadiths about this, right? But essentially, where does the Sunni fiqh of this come from? It comes from looking how the Sahaba dealt with it. That's where it essentially comes from, right? So it is very much, if you had like a Shi'i a Shi'i way of looking at things is going to be quite different. So the Shia and the Ibadis and the Khawarij, the way they look at politics is quite different, right? Because it's half of it is formed from a historical narrative, how we view things, and judge things, and then judge things and then view them, right? And so it's very much the case. I believe Imam Shafi said that explicitly. He said, here we go. So Imam Shafi said, I took the rules of rebellion from the battle between Sayyidina Ali and Muawiyah, right? So that civil war, that's what Imam Shafi took the fiqh from, right? So we have a group, number one. When you say a rebel, it does not mean free dingle, okay? It means a group, okay? There is a group of Muslims. They are Muslims, okay? So they're not non-Muslims. They have military power, okay? So far, they are not too different to Qat al-Tariq, right? So we said Qat al-Tariq, the what's it called? Highway robbery, right? We said that was, it doesn't have to be a group really, but it has to be Muslim. They have military power, and that either people being attacked or in danger don't have access to safety. That's what we're talking about, right? So they're at sea, they're in the desert, they're in an area that's been totally taken over by this gang, okay? Now, where is it fundamentally and painfully different is these people have a religious reason. They are not bandits and murderers. These are religious people, right? These are religious people who love Allah, they love His Messenger, and they're like, this is wrong, we're rebelling, okay? And so it's really important to understand that, right? So again, I studied Arabic literature. One of the genres of Arabic literature, or kind of the subgenres, is rebel literature, right? The Shi'r al-Khawarij, the poetry and oratory of these people. These people are religious people. They're driven by religion. They're not driven by something else, right? So their motive, for example, to kill Sayyidina Ali, right? The Khawarij to kill Sayyidina Ali, the motive of the default ISIS person, right? Having a good opinion of them is religion, right? You look at the Muslim world and it's all a joke and see what's going on. And then somebody suddenly has a flag with La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and they're going to pay you $500 a month to die in the way of Allah. Why not? And they're going to apply the Sharia even though no one else is applying the Sharia, etc. Right? The default rhetoric is it's a religious one, right? It is not that we're trying to kill somebody or steal something, right? It's a religious rhetoric, right? So they have some kind of sound religious reason, right? So like Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu anha and other Sahaba going up against Sayyidina Ali, they're saying you are not applying the Sharia. Sayyidina Uthman was killed and you have done nothing about it, right? Sayyidina Muawiyah, the same thing, right? The Khawarij, who then turned against Sayyidina Ali and said, why did you agree to arbitration with Sayyidina Ali? Why did you do that? Right? You are the Khalifa, you have absolute right. The fact that you have not seen your absolute right means you have done a major sin. And if you do a major sin, you have left Islam. Therefore, we will fight you. Okay? And so then Sayyidina Ali sends Ibn Abbas to debate with them. They're religious people. We're going to send a scholar to you to debate with you on a religious thing. Guys, please stop. Your understanding of the deen is wrong. I am Ibn Abbas. I'm a scholar. I'm talking to you with religious weight here. Listen to me. And these people are saying, no, you're going against the Quran. The Quran says this, and it says this, and it says this. So these people are religious people. They are not something else, right? So this is where it becomes very, very difficult because ultimately you're killing somebody who's righteous, right? They might be confused, but they're righteous, right? And even there's a very, very sticky fiqh issue, so we said after Sayyidina Muawiyah got control, then after him he appointed his son Yazid and Muawiyah, okay? And during that time, during the time of the Umayyads, Sayyidina Hussein is killed. So are you going to label Sayyidina Hussein as a rebel? Are you going to, that's a bit of a, that's a hard one to swallow, right? I mean, so the Shia would say no. Ahl Bayt have legitimacy. So Sayyidina Ali has absolute control. Anybody who goes against him is wrong. You are wrong because you're going against the powers of Ahl Bayt. Sayyidina Hussein had the right to the throne, metaphorically. So therefore he cannot be a rebel. But for the Sunnis, it's a problem, right? It's like kind of you don't want to say it because it's not a very nice thing to say, but that's basically technically how you'd label them, is that no, you are a Muslim rebel, right? Yes, you are a very pious person, but your rebellion has to be quelled. And if that results in the death of righteous Muslims, so be it, right? You can see how obviously difficult this whole issue is. Go ahead, Badr.
Yeah, so all over the Arab world, and actually no, and over the wider Muslim world, there are groups of Muslims like ISIS, and those groups are very clearly, they fall under this category here that you're talking about. But there are groups that they'll like call for Khilafah, and they're a group, and they have Muslims, and they're righteous people, but they don't fight against people, and they don't like they're very clear that they don't condone like violence and terrorism and stuff, like, so they wouldn't fall under this category, right?
Military power. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right. So I remember, who was it? Sheikh Abdul Malik Saadi. He's basically was kind of like arguably the kind of former mufti of Iraq. So he was in Jordan for a long time, and then between Jordan and Iraq. And so he was he led a peaceful protest against the Iraqi government in, I don't know, maybe like 2018 or something like that. I can't remember what it was. And then the government comes out and starts like shooting at them and things like that. So he's like, "What are you talking about? You know, what are you doing? Like, we're not, we are not a group of, like, we're not a group of Muslims with military power. A protest is not rebel. You can't do that, right? So we might be a group of Muslims with sound religious. We object to this government not applying Sharia law, and we're going to protest every Friday. Every Friday we're going to protest. We protest that, for example, what's happening about Palestine. That's not called a rebel, as opposed to somebody
Okay.
who comes along and says, you know, they say we're gonna kick this, you know, like arguably Salah ad-Din Ayyubi, right? What did he do? He said, before I can knock out the what's it called? The Crusader states, I have to take Egypt, right? So when Egypt was defending itself against the Salah ad-Din Ayyubi, then if you were to label him as a rebel, I mean, again, rhetorically doesn't sound very nice, right? But like technically speaking, I guess yeah, you can label him like that. So oftentimes it's you know, there's fiqh and then there's politics, not necessarily the same thing, right? And then there's situations where, like, you know, it's just no way as simple as we would like to make it. You know, they always say, for example, that many of the great Salaf were very, very pro-Abbasid when the Abbasid revolution happened. Like, we're very happy for this to happen, but that's essentially wrong, right? But so, you know, how does that even work? So you know, Salah ad-Din Ayyubi is saying, the only way that I can attack these states is I have to have control of, not just of Egypt as well. So I need to get hold of control of Egypt. That's what he did. But again, answering to your point, Badr, they do not have military power, so they're not rebels. That's it. And so can you imprison these people and torture these people and all this kind of stuff? No, that's their job. You are always going to have religious people that disagree with you. And as a political figure, you're always going to have people who are politically, religiously against you. They're saying your politics are un-Islamic. That doesn't mean you can imprison people and torture people, right? So that was one of the novels we did at university. It was called Karnak, right? So Karnak is a film by Naguib Mahfouz, right? Naguib Mahfouz is a very, very significant you know, literary figure in Egypt and in the world in reality. And so he wrote this book. It's basically like a cafe. And in this cafe, basically, people who are rebelling against the socialist Egyptian, you know, rulers of the time, they are you know, they're gathering there, and then everything kind of revolves around that cafe, basically. So then people get spied on there, and then there's the news of people being tortured and whether they came back alive or not, it goes there, etc. And then one of the hilarious things is the head of the secret police who basically tortured most people in that cafe ends up coming to that cafe as somebody who was also tortured at some point. Right? And it's kind of like these kind of things. So that world that we saw or you see, right? This is not what Islam is telling us to do, right? Ferret out all opposition and torture them to death. You know, that's just the nature of things. People are going to disagree, right? Many of the Sahaba had religious and political objections to Sayyidina Uthman. That's why there was all that tension, right? That doesn't mean that you can ferret them out and murder them. And he didn't do things like that. And you know. Okay. So the first fitna, the murder of Sayyidina Ali. Yeah, go ahead.
So during the time of Salah ad-Din, there were these two caliphs.
Well, there was many, so that's what again makes it even more complex. So the last time that the Ummah was won was about 1,300 years ago. So since then, we have never had one Muslim nation. So the Umayyads, after Sayyidina Ali, there was a conflict between Sayyidina Ali, So in our civil war, Sayyidina Ali is killed. Okay, and that leaves people who are objecting to it in Medina, people objecting to it in that's in the Hijaz and that area, people objecting to it in Iraq, and then the Levant, Egypt, and North Africa under the Umayyads. So the Umayyads then they expanded into into Spain, and they expanded out across Central Asia, going into parts of Pakistan, and that was one nation. There was one nation called the Umayyads, right? That lasted till 131 Hijri, and then the Abbasids took over the Middle East. So then the Umayyads just continued in North Africa and Spain. So then there was two, and then they became three, and then they became four, and then it became this, and then different times over history. But when you come along and say this ruler is the ruler of the Muslims, whenever you say that, right, it's always a bit metaphorical. You know, like King Muhammad VI, right, of Morocco today is called Amir al-Mu'minin. He's called the leader of the faithful, right? I'm sure to some extent someone like King Abdullah of Jordan would also identify. Say, yeah, he's also from Ahl Bayt, and the King Muhammad they're from Ahl Bayt, and they're from Quraysh, and they're, you know, it was supposed to be the king of the Arabs, but then they divided them up into this and divided them into that, etc., 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 right? And so, but that's the key thing to understand is we have not had unity for about 1,300 years. So then who is rebelling against, who is the rebel and who is the legitimate person? That's the problem. It's a political problem and it's a religious problem. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you swear fealty, at least nominally, to the actual, an actual caliph, if that's makes sense.
So you swore fealty to one. I don't really know. I'm trying to think about. Not sure. So now I have to. So now basically, I have to be loyal to that person against the other person. I don't know how simple that is. I don't know. So the default is you are in a Muslim country. So I'm under Salahuddin Ayyubi, right? Or I'm in Turkmenistan right now. And so outwardly, the ruler is a Muslim. And he says, everybody has to do this. You have to drive on this side of the road. You have to drive on that side of the road, right? We spoke about this before. So that's as far as I can say, like, but when there's two rulers, Allahu Alam, like, do you have to be loyal to one over the other? I don't know. Allahu Alam. Okay, so we mentioned the Battle of Jamal. That was the first battle in Siffin, and then the Khawarij.
I'm sorry, can I ask one more question?
Go ahead, Sham. Yeah.
So just connecting to the conversation you were just having about rulers, whatever, I think you mentioned Turkmenistan, but the president of Turkmenistan like wrote a book called like the Book of Souls and then took speeches from that and put it into Qur'ans in Turkmenistan. So how can we call him the Amir Mu'minin?
So we're going to say takfir is a legal process. Labeling somebody as a kafir is a legal process. So we say, was he born a Muslim? Yes. Okay. So we need a legal process to happen to change his identity card. It's literally like that. Like when I was in Jordan, like on your identity card, it says Christian or Muslim. And even if you're atheist, we don't really care because you haven't been proven to be an atheist yet. So when we say he's a Muslim, he says, does he say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah? Yes. Has he been clearly stated as an atheist? No. So you add things that, well, I add things to the Mus'haf here. There's commentary on the side of the book, right? That you know, so that's not takfir. So takfir is a legal process right? Where we're going to say he has done this and he has said this and he's brought to court and he's asked to repent for 3 days. And if he does not repent, then in the Shafi school, he's executed as an apostate, right? And so that hasn't happened.
But Sheikh, I'm sorry, I don't. I'm just asking the question. I don't mean to debate you. You're the alim here. I'm just saying, is in Turkmenistan, why would the courts hold him accountable if all the Islamic structures are corrupt?
Okay, so
And
then
no other
at least
country
the
is going to
fatwa then.
interfere.
At least for example, it's clear he says or does something that is clear kufr. So it is not clear kufr to put a piece of paper with your own random things inside the Quran to tell people when you read this chapter, read this as well, right? Like that's not kufr, right? And so the fact that I don't know what else, there's like a countless gazillion things that they do, you know. Again, my wife, she wasn't in Turkmenistan, she was in not Kazakhstan, what's it called? Uzbekistan. It's like, you know, they're like, oh, do you pray? No. Do you fast? No. Do you wear hijab? No. Do you drink beer? Do you drink whatever they drink? Yes. Are you Muslim? Yes. It's like, how are you Muslim? Right? And so it has to be very crystal clear. And in that situation, this ruler is not Muslim, right? The ruler is not Muslim, خلاص, period. And so, you know,
Thank you. Sorry for the
right? So
diversion.
people have to make wudu and then read this. Yeah, that's not kufr, right?
No, I'm. This is the article I've read about this. This is the text. It's called the Ruhnama. It's like a
Yeah.
thing
It's
he wrote.
Farsi, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, you know, same thing like the Alawids, right? Of Syria, like there's a line, right? Like if you're Ismaili, right? I don't know, Ismailis, are they Muslims? I don't really know enough about them, but like, so labeling somebody kufr is a big thing, right? At the end of the day, it's like, do you say La ilaha Muhammad Rasulullah? Yes, right? Okay, Muslim ruler. Thank you very much. Right, and we spoke about this again. No, we didn't speak about it last week. I'm not sure. With Ibn Taymiyyah writing his fatwa against the Mongols, right? So that first generation or second generation of Muslim Mongols did not abide by the Sharia. Like Sharia law is like, no, we have our own Mongol law. We don't apply Sharia law. Why would you do that? We see religion as other people see religion. It's not a way of life. Religion is how you do religious things, not how you do politics or law. And so he wrote an essay, you know, basically a fatwa saying these people are not Muslims, which is fundamentally problematic because, like, that means you're a Catholic because you don't apply Sharia law. That's not really the case, right? So there's countless Muslim rulers that you'd be like, I don't understand how I could even call you a Muslim. Like, I don't even want to give response Islam to you. But when you say, technically speaking, are they a Muslim? I say, yeah, technically speaking, they're a Muslim, as long as they haven't done this, or they haven't done that, or they haven't clearly said this or clearly said that. Right. So Allahu A'lam. So the default is Muslim and that's it. So the first fitna we have in Sayyidina Ali, he is the Imam. Right, he is the Imam, and Muawiyah and the followers are rebels. Sayyidina Aisha and Talha and other people come from Medina are rebels, and then the Khawarij later on, who are also rebels, label them as rebels. So rebels is not a moral statement, it is a fiqh statement. We're not trying to say you're bad people, right? It's just trying to label it in retrospect. What is it, right? The second fitna, Hassan gave power over, but Hussein did Sayyidina Hussein did not, right? And Abdullah ibn Zubayr, so Muawiyah gave power to Yazid, so Yazid became the Imam, even though he wasn't a religious person, as far as we know, right? And Abdullah ibn Zubayr, you know, one of the first Sahaba born in this is the Abdullah ibn Zubayr is the grandson of Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, the son of Asma bint Abi Bakr, and the brother of Urwa ibn Zubayr, right? So this is very interesting. If you see in the Muwatta of Imam Malik, you're going to find Imam Malik quoting discussions where Marwan ibn Abdul Hakam is the person who under him had Abdullah ibn Zubayr crucified. And yet his brother is talking to Marwan ibn Abdul Hakam in Medina as a righteous or a good ruler, right? So a lot of these things are very, very interesting, right? How we perceive things. That's very important to understand. Basically, our whole understanding of Islam, I'm going to sound very Orientalist right now, forgive me. Our whole understanding of Islam is like a person looking at a pond and then looking at the sky. Okay, I'm looking at the sky. The sky is Islam. The pond that I'm looking at is what's called what? It's called the Abbasids and post-Abbasids. So we look at everything through that pond, a reflection in a mirror that is, right? We look at everything in that light. So Yazid ibn Muawiyah, bad guy, right? Well, that's how he's labeled, right? But things are a bit more complex than that, right? Because that's how we see things. So Tafsir al-Tabari, Tarikh al-Tabari, the history of the annals, not really history, the annals of Imam al-Tabari, the Tafsir of Tabari, the 6 books, they're all written in an Abbasid or post-Abbasid period, right? And they're not written in the Umayyad period. They're not seeing life through the Umayyad mind, right? Again, I sound very Orientalist, as if everything's affected by politics, But it's not irrelevant, right? It's not irrelevant. So technically speaking, we would label Abdullah ibn Zubayr, that great, amazing scholar, right? An amazing person who wanted righteousness. We label him as a rebel, right? And so when he took control of the Kaaba, he was doing the wrong thing. And the irreligious ruler who then appointed the governor Hajjaj ibn Yusuf to take over the Kaaba, and that resulted in the Kaaba being catapulted, right? Imagine somebody shooting a catapult, right? A huge rock at the Kaaba and crucifying the Sahabi, Abdullah Zubayr, and killing people like Sa'id and Jubayr, etc. All these amazing people. Allegedly they're in the right and these people are on the wrong. So this is a fiqh discussion, not a moral discussion. We're not saying who's good and who's bad. We're saying what has to happen, right? It's like saying somebody who was praying with 100% khushu' and they broke their wudu 1 second before they gave salams, and somebody who was daydreaming and they did not. Whose prayer is valid? The guy whose wudu was not broken. Okay, whose prayer was accepted? That's something else, right? So it's not, we're not giving a position number 1, he's a rebel. Position number 2, they're both imams, right? And that makes it even more complex. We'll discuss it later on. So anyway, group Muslims, military power, not just protests, sound religious reason, not just opposition, right? That's something else. So for example, the Hurub al-Ridda, right? So the Hurub al-Ridda, when Sayyidina Abu Bakr came in, many desert Arabs said, we had an agreement with Muhammad, do not have an agreement with you. We are not giving zakat to you. So the Prophet said, Abu Bakr said, I will fight them until they give me every single dime they used to give to the Prophet, right? So he fought against them. As opposed to Nahrawan, these were religious reasons. This is the Khawarij fighting against Sayyidina Ali. This is a religious thing. So here is not really religious, it's just wrong. So he fought them as kuffar, whereas here they were fought as Muslims. So we're going over time, but we'll just continue for a little bit. So first of all, there's diplomacy. You're talking to righteous Muslims. They love Allah and love His Messenger, for crying out loud. So diplomacy. So we have to suppress them. We still have to recognize them as Muslims. Their wealth is sacred, right? Their blood is not sacred on the battlefield, so you can kill them. You may not kill their injured because they've already been suppressed now. So you can't, if they're injured, you're going to take them to hospital. You cannot use destructive weapons because they might give up. And they must be prayed over because they are Muslims. Okay, and inshallah we'll continue with apostasy next week, inshallah ta'ala. And perhaps we'll go back and some of these things again, inshallah. We'll stop here. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Subhanallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka.